For anyone who has seen my Part 1 review of this Season 4 opener, you could easily tell that I really enjoyed the first episode. In fact, the only major gripe I have with it is the fact that Zecora and her potion seem to be little more than a deus ex machina. I was really getting into the story as the suspense continued to build. Especially with how the episode came to an end, I was really getting invested in how everything would play out. So, did the second part actually live up to everything that the first part was leading up to? Well, yes and no. I think there are some brilliant, even fantastic moments in this episode. Certainly a number of things that caught me off guard and are actually rather intriguing. But there are other elements in this second episode that feel predictable, and even a few moments that made me wonder why they were there in the first place. But perhaps I should start from the beginning. The episode starts off with a bang, as Princess Celestia faces off against Nightmare Moon, and the animation here is actually very impressive. It almost felt like I was watching a movie with all the ways they put this scene together. Nightmare Moon is actually quite threatening here, even to the point of striking Celestia down. When Twilight started tearing up next to her fallen mentor, it was a really effective scene, and I wanted to see so much more of this. Problem is, this scene doesn't last all that long. And as much as I was hoping to see a lot of depth from Celestia when she has to make her choice to use the elements against her sister, there really wasn't that much here. I've seen fan interpretations of this ancient story between the royal sisters that had much more depth than this. And honestly, I know that the writers could have put so much more here. But alas, this two-part season opener only has 2 parts, and there is still far more that they needed to go over. Twilight gets another look into the past with Discord playing his role, and the princess is using the elements to lock him in stone. And this scene, while not nearly so engaging as the first, did manage to accomplish a good setup. And the first time I was watching this scene, it seemed that Discord really had no clue what the elements were or the danger they represented. And like most everyone else, it didn't even occur to me that those seeds he was eating and spreading around had any real bearing on the story. A job well done for the writers here. And then we get to see the elements coming from something called the Tree of Harmony. And yeah, this is the moment where who knows how many fanfictions became null and void. Fans have been putting together theories about the elements of harmony for years. Even I've put together some theories on them. But now this tree is here, we start to wonder just where it came from. How did the princesses come to know about the tree and yet no one else did? Were the princesses the first to ever wield the elements? These are questions that I'm going to have to look into later. But at least we now know that the princesses first collected the elements because of Discord. And apparently the Tree of Harmony is what has kept these vines from growing out of control over these many centuries. So the main 6 have to make their way into the Everfree Forest again, and they reminisce about their first escapades from the 2 pilot episodes. But after a very brief attack from a crocodile, Applejack starts suggesting that perhaps Twilight should head back to town where it's safe. Now, when I first heard this, I can remember thinking that they were going to come up with some convoluted reason just to separate the group and create tension. But then Applejack makes a really good point about Twilight. If she is lost, then all of Equestria could be without a leader. And that part legitimately surprised me when it actually kind of made sense for Twilight to go back. But that doesn't change the fact that the next few scenes are unbelievably predictable. Of course Twilight is going to have to go back into the forest and try to get back with her friends. But then Discord makes a really good point when he says that a great leader should be willing to brave the dangers with everyone else. So the reasoning that both Applejack and Discord came up with here were very solid. But that still doesn't change the fact that we can easily tell what's going to happen before it actually happens. So the lesson is a bit cliche and predictable about friends sticking together. I'd say that they could have put in more of a lesson about how a leader not only needs to think about what her nation needs most, but also that she needs to lead by example even when dangerous circumstances arise, but oh well. Now, something else that I did not see coming was when the main 6 have to give up the elements of harmony. And this is actually an interesting change to the show's structure. If this Tree of Harmony can no longer survive without the elements inside it, then that means the elements of harmony can no longer be relied upon when the truly dangerous villains come about. And this is immediately followed up with starting a new story arc with this box that came from the tree. The fact that it has 6 locks, and that even Celestia doesn't seem to know what is inside it, or even where the keys are, can definitely lead into some interesting stories. But while this overarching storyline could be a great strength to Season 4, it could also lead into a great problem. First off, I sincerely hope that the writers are planning on devoting multiple episodes to this box over the course of the season. Like maybe discovering one key per episode, and perhaps getting a very slight hint each time as to what could be inside. If they end up postponing this story idea to the last 2 episodes of the season, then that will likely end up being far too much to put into far too little screen time. Second off, the fact that this box has been presented has now set our expectations quite high. When we do find out what is inside, it needs to feel like a really good payoff, given that we've been set up with this hype so early on in the season. So after the episode came to an end, I was feeling really good about most everything that I saw. The scenes with Discord were still really fun. We were given a lot more information about the world of Equestria, and that opening scene between Celestia and Luna was quite memorable. But then I realized, what was the point of putting that scene in the episode? I mean, sure, the animation was spectacular. There were emotional moments that really tugged at the heartstrings. And we finally got to see what really happened between Celestia and Nightmare Moon all those years ago. But how does this scene add to the story? When Twilight was looking into the past, what purpose did that first scene serve? As much as we would lose a really intriguing moment of equestrian history, this scene did nothing to move the plot along. At least with Discord, we were shown not only how he was defeated by the elements, but we were also surprised to learn that those vines actually came from the seeds he was spreading around. It turns out that Discord actually did have a plan in mind when facing against the elements. I suspect that he wanted Celestia and Luna to remove the elements from the tree so that his vines could destroy it, which would actually make for a lot more subtlety and cunning on the part of Discord. Although even he was surprised to learn that the tree apparently had enough magic left in itself to keep the vines from spreading for all those years. However, that does beg the question as to why those vines started to spread now. Before I close, there is one more interesting little tidbit that I would like to talk about today. In the first episode, Applejack starts talking to Twilight about how the elements are what brought the main 6 together in the first place. And now that the elements are perhaps no longer going to be wielded by them in the future, I think these episodes are setting up a situation where they will have to depend even more on each other to get them through any future conflicts, which has some great potential to lead to some very interesting stories. But what do you think? Despite the opening scenes being so very memorable, was there really any point in having it to further the story? Given Discord's actions here, and his apparent plan to destroy the Tree of Harmony in ancient times past, what kind of part will he be playing in future episodes? Do you have any thoughts about this Tree of Harmony and whether the main 6 will ever wield the elements again? Given the apparent story arc involving this unknown box, do you think that we'll be seeing more episodes throughout this season that will be giving us more of a gradual story? To be honest, despite the many issues that I talked about with these episodes, the positives definitely still outweigh the negatives, and I look forward to seeing what else the writers will present to us. And I would like to hear your thoughts on this Season 4 two-parter, while we await the next intriguing episode that MLP will bring us in the future. I am DRWolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Fine, but I don't do windows.